How did you first get involved in modelling?
A good question. I have been on an Ozzy Osbourne album cover when I was about 7. I was his child bride, an experience I'll never forget, quite honestly. Yeah, and I still have my bride's outfit from that, which is amazing. I guess my mum's friend owned like a little child's agency, so I would sometimes do a tiny bit. Like I did Tiffany Jewels with Norman Parkinson when I was about 7 as well. And and then Sarah Ducasse often came up to me when I was like in Portobello Road, or I remember in Oxford Street she came up to me and my brother and my sister when we were buying records in Virgin or something. But I was really reluctant to start young for some reason. I really liked being at school, and you know, I kind of just didn't really join her for a long time. And then after my A-levels I did, and then it was really Mario who kind of like started my career, because he was a friend of my brother's and he knows my mum and my aunt and stuff like that, and he'd actually shot me when I was 6 for Barney's catalogue or something. And so he was actually the first person to shoot me. But no, and then Mario shot me and my cousin Freddie for British Vogue with Lucinda Chambers. And it was a really fun shoot because they just had like a ton of clothes and a ton of makeup laid out. And it was very much like he wanted us just to be us, because he really liked the way that we were as ourselves. So we could dress ourselves up and, you know, tell Tom Pashoo what makeup we wanted, and it was fun. And then from there he booked me for Burberry's with Kate for a couple of seasons, and Sonia Rykiel, and you know, so it was really sort of him that got the ball rolling.
You guest edited an issue of British Vogue.
That was fun.
What was the experience like?
It's one of my best ever experiences in my life. It was just amazing, first of all, to be asked by British Vogue to do something like that. And I was really so flattered. You know, I called up Nick and I asked him if he'd do it with me. And he said he'd love to do it, but as long as it all came from me. So I was a bit daunted, but also really excited. And I remember just being in my flat in Shepherd's Bush, kind of rifling around, and I was like, okay, what am I actually going to do? And I just decided to sort of pull everything off my shelves, and you know, bits of clothing and stuff that I loved, and I just put everything on the floor in a heap, whether it was a Keats book or a Georgia O'Keeffe print or an Elia belt, you know, and I just kind of came up with a theme that I could sort of like come together with my favourite bits of poetry or whatever it was. So yeah, I went to Nick with 3 enormous kind of storyboards and, you know, pictures and cutouts and bits of fabric and stuff. And we just came up with this kind of mad concept, which was just so exciting. And to be in the studio with Nick for 3 days, kind of, you know, really creating something so, you know, imaginative was just amazing. And it was a push because it was a really strong message, what I wanted to say as a woman, and, you know, to be able to kind of be printed in Vogue. So I think all around it was a really brilliant thing to be a part of, and for Alexandra to kind of go ahead and print some of the imagery she did was brilliant of her. So yeah, it was fun.
What do you think makes a great model? I
think the good models are fantastic actresses. And for me, I was always really into, I would always ask the photographer, well, you know, I asked the photographer, who am I today? Or what am I supposed to be thinking? What are my thoughts behind this girl? And that's what's so kind of amazing to me about my job, is that every day I can play a different woman. And, you know, recently when I kind of had a big break from modeling stuff to have my children, I really realized that that's what I missed most about my job, is that kind of freedom to express and kind of create and become somebody totally different. And it's just brilliant. I mean, naturally, I'm actually a really shy girl, as, you know, Liberty Ross, the normal person. But once you've kind of got made up and, you know, your hair's been done, you know, you literally transform. And so I found that incredibly kind of enticing and just such an expression and such an amazing place to be, where you can kind of just really let go. I found being in front of cameras incredibly freeing, actually. I think the best models are the ones that, you know, can become somebody else and take on a character and, you know, really go with it. And, you know, if you're lucky enough to work with a photographer who's going to kind of really let you, you know, go through that process, and that's amazing. I mean, for me, working with Nick was just so incredible, because he really allows you to go places that you didn't even really know that you could. You know, every time I've shot with him, I've been kind of transported somewhere completely different. So that's, as a model, that's, you know, the most amazing thing, I think.
And a natural question to ask off the back of that, what makes a great photographer?
The best photographers are the ones who aren't kind of insecure, you know, they're the ones that, I don't know, to be on set with a confident photographer who's sort of not trying to control everything. I think for me, you know, sometimes out of, not necessarily, I don't mean mistakes, but things that you didn't really know were going to happen, because you allow the kind of freedom and the magic to take over, you know, so then you get these incredible images that weren't necessarily what you might have been going for, or, you know, what you thought they would be, but it's something completely different within that realm. So I think, you know, I mean, the best photographers are obviously the ones that will allow that freedom and that magic to kind of happen, rather than try and control things and be like, this is exactly what we need, and, you know.
Do you think kind of that's the dynamic between, or the ideal dynamic between a model and a photographer then? That
Definitely. I think it's all about kind of bouncing off each other's energy, and, you know, I mean, I really prefer kind of shooting. I like to kind of close off the set so I can just really connect with the photographer and just have the few people around, so that you can just kind of get completely absorbed and just lost in that space of creativity. That's how I like to work anyway.
A lot of the shoots that you've done, you've pushed yourself, or you've allowed yourself to be pushed to do quite extreme things. Pulling kind of from SHOWstudio, I thought Dress Me Up, Dress Me Down was something that it would be terribly difficult to get a lot of models to do. The references behind it were kind of pornographic chat rooms, and you're surrendering a lot of control to someone that you can't even see.
I know, it's quite voyeuristic. I love a challenge, and I don't really like doing things that aren't a challenge, to be honest with you. So actually Dress Me Up, Dress Me Down is definitely one of my favourite things that I've ever been a part of. I think from conception to what it turned out to be, you know, and being written up in newspapers, like, is this fashion or is this porn? I think that's brilliant. And if I can kind of like make people think, then I've done something really good. And it was the same with the British Vogue thing, you know, I wanted people to open it up and for it to not be what you would expect a model to, you know, want to portray, or, you know, yeah, I want to make people think if I can. And Dress Me Up, Dress Me Down, I was just saying to Nick, I spent the day in that studio yesterday, and I hadn't been in there since we did those 3 days for Dress Me Up. And it was brilliant to kind of like be back in that space, because, you know, that studio became like such a home for me for 3 days. And but yeah, I loved that project. I loved the sort of, you know, when I spoke to Nick about it initially, I said to him, you know, I want to make a flip book, because I had this flip book that I found in some sort of like, I can't even remember where I was. I think I was in Prague or something shooting the Dior ad, and I went into this like dusty old bookshop, and I found this amazing old 60s, you know, those flip books where you can change the head and the body and the feet. And I called up Nick, I was like, I found this book and I want to do like a virtual flip book. So, and it was really fun. It was like I just had a baby and I was sort of in that kind of dreamy space, and then I had Rupert filming me every day in a different situation, you know, whether I was in the swimming pool or, you know, tied up with ropes on my kitchen floor or, you know, laying next to my fireplace or whatever. And it's still, I think I love that little project. It was so fun. And so yeah, and it was fun kind of seeing the progression of what dressed me up, dressed me down, kind of where it started and where it went. It was interesting.
What do you think motivates you to model? Why do you enjoy it?
Well, this is the thing, and because I had a break, I was kind of really able to kind of think about that. And like I said before, I mean, for me, it's a really creative process, and it's something that, I don't know, I feel really that it's within me somehow. I mean, not necessarily modeling, but, you know, acting and anything, there's a certain freedom that I find and feel in front of cameras. It's really bizarre, but it's the truth. And I don't know, it's a form of expression that I think is just so amazing to me. You know, it's really fun, and it's fun to be a part of. You know, it's like when I shot all the Dior fragrance, the Dior Addict, with Nick and with John. It was really brilliant to be a part of something like that, you know, and you realize how much goes into these things. You know, it's not just, you know, you don't just flip through a magazine, oh yeah, look at that and look at that. It's like, you know, everything has a message, you know, everything's hitting a certain target audience, and, you know, it's all really important for a brand ultimately. So, so yeah, you know, I think, but yeah, being a part of the Dior Addict thing was amazing, and it really kind of, it was just so fun to do that, you know. And then I went and shot the commercial, which was the first time that I was like, I think acting could be really fun. And yeah, they're all amazing. So I've been very lucky to work with such brilliantly creative and intelligent and fantastic people.
My last question is a question that you originally asked when we interviewed Kate Moss in 2003.
Yeah.
The question you posed to Kate Moss was, which image would you like to be remembered for, and which would you most like to be forgotten? Oh
yeah, that was a good question, wasn't it? Well, I can't remember what she said. I'd be really interested to know. Gosh, that's really tricky. I don't know. I don't think there's anything I'd like to be forgotten, really. Remembered by is probably just kind of, I guess, being English, and, you know, maybe Mario shooting me and Kate together quite often was really important to me and meant a lot. And also, you know, working with Nick, a British photographer, and creating with John Galliano, who's British, but doing something, you know, really striking. I think, I don't know, I love what Nick and I did for British Vogue. I think it was a really strong message, you know, like I said. So I can't pinpoint a single image, but I could pinpoint realms within my work.